And then the next thing that you were talking about was how you challenge your cognitive distortions. So sometimes this doesn't work so well, but it sounds like it works really well for you, that when you have a worry, you go all the way down to the worst catastrophe that you can think of. And so when you get perspective and can see that, this is a deadline that your boss would like you to meet, but you won't lose your job or you won't have some kind of catastrophic outcome on the project if you miss that deadline. That's a really great way of like noticing that your mind got sensitized and noticing that it went to the worst case scenario, but then getting perspective and challenging that idea that anxious thought is true, it's a message, or it's a threat. Does that all resonate with you?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The other thing that came to mind as you were saying that is around going to the worst case scenario. Like I've used that, I guess, in two ways. One being exactly what you said, where like I go down and say, okay, the worst case that's going to happen is I miss this deadline, but like ultimately I'm not going to lose my job, like, etc. And I've had anxiety before where I'm stuck on like a particular content theme and I am there for a really long time. And I ultimately am just like, what is like the worst case that might happen? And it ultimately is like, this happens, then this happens, then this happens, and I lose my job. And then in that case, I kind of use it to just be like, yeah, I might lose my job, which sounds crazy, but I found that actually when I practiced that enough was helpful in the process. Because when I first said it out loud, like I might lose my job is a problem. Like I need my income. It's a, super stressful time in the economy. But the more that I practiced that specific technique, the more that I was able to kind of get like a lightness around it where it's like, yeah, I might lose my job. And it is almost like, not a joke. I don't know how to explain this, but it became like a lighter sensation that it was like, okay, that's the worst case that could happen. And I'm just going to move on and like continue doing my best and doing what I do and taking care of myself in the process.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is that you get distance or you're diffusing from the thought. So there's a couple different things there. First, if you think about it enough that your body sees it as a thought, not a message or a threat, then you're not going to get that physiology as much. And then it doesn't seem like as big of a threat. In this case, it sounds like you're also taking it to the worst case scenario and responding with efficacy. So some part of you knows that if you were to lose your job, if the worst case scenario occurred, you'd be able to handle it. And so that kind of self-efficacy of like, yeah, I can handle this if it were to occur, can certainly alleviate anxiety. So that sounds like that was a great technique. Sometimes if the content is something that is very difficult to bear, so for instance, the fear, if the content is a health problem and then the worst case scenario is me or a loved one dies, then that's obviously really difficult to tolerate.
Right.
So what you'd want to be tolerating is having the thought that I could die. So rather, I'm having the fear that I'm going to get a fatal illness. I feel worried about it and the desire to Google it or ask other people about it. I'm feeling anxiety in my body. And what I want to do is practice having the thought, not doing anything in response, and living with the possibility that the thought intrudes and I don't do anything in response. You're not saying it would be okay for me to die. You're just saying it would be okay for me to have the thought that I could die.
Yeah, that's been helpful.
Yeah. So I think it depends on whether or not you feel that you can handle the feared consequence, then going to the worst case scenario is a great technique. So thanks for bringing that up.